self-serving, that's gonna be good.
Because I'm on the commission. No, I can't remember. For Dan? I can't remember
10 seconds.
that. 9.
I'd like to call this regular city council meeting of November 10, 2014 to order. We would like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call shows all are present, including department heads. Approval of the minutes for October 27 and for October 30 special meeting.
I'll move the 27th.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now for the October 30 special meeting we had.
I'll move that.
I'll support that.
Okay, further discussion, just for the audience's sake, that meeting was a special meeting for benefits that were being changed for our unions, and we were trying to meet a 30-day window for them to be able to review that, so that's what that was about. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of bills.
I'll move the bills.
Let's get a second, then we have discussion.
I just wanted to ask Bob, the two lift stations, Carriage and Trotter's Point, is it unusual that they would fail in that same kind of time window?
No, and I had one fail today, in fact, they're in extremely intense, environments. They sit below water. I always have backup, it's not working. Were you pointing to the
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was waving to the crowd.
Okay. They're extremely intense environments. They sit below the surface of the water. They run 24/7 on and off, on and off. And every now and then they fail, and somewhat it's coincidental. I think what happened on that one though, one failed, we replaced it because I keep an inventory of an extra one, and then we just took both in to have them two fixed at the same time. But that's all.
Okay, let's hold at that point. We've had a motion to approve, and we need a second, and then we can discuss.
I'll second it.
All right, now, discussion of the bills. Harvey.
Thank you. On the first page of the checks written for, right toward the very bottom, the Bricko excavating, the GWRF payment, is that our last payment, or are there more payments to go?
I believe there's one more payment to go, but, Mike?
Yeah, one or two.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of the agenda, addition or deletions?
I sent everybody an email this afternoon. I hope you all got a chance to read it. I would like to add an item to the agenda dealing with a repair of a force main at the Water's Edge apartment. It's the force main that deals with the entire northern half of the city.
Where would you like it placed?
We could put it after number 5, make it item 5A.
Anything else?
Not this evening.
I move the agenda as amended.
I'll second.
For discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment. Anybody wishes to speak at this time on any item not listed on our agenda? That's good. We can move on to old business, which we have none. Now we can go to new business. consider request for a permit for the Kiwanis Christmas tree sale in McCaddy Park. Is there a representative here?
Hello, Phil Wypert, 135 North Warren. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Every year, we ask the council if we can use the depot grounds to sell Christmas trees. We usually sell them from the end of November and have it all cleaned up by the end of December. That project supports our annual Senior Citizen Christmas Dinner, which is on Monday, December 8th at the Old High School, and numerous other projects, dictionaries we give to the third graders. So we're asking if we can use the depot grounds. We gotten good insurance through Kiwanis, the hold harmless, and made the request. And we are, we usually have it cleaned up and try to leave it better than we found it.
Okay, are you aware, I know how you normally set it up, you're gonna have to set it up a little different this time?
We usually work with Cool Yule and the Christmas tree lighting. In fact, we've ordered the tree for Cool Yule and the
Because
Christmas
they've
tree.
been planning on using the gazebo area, lighting it up and so forth, and I don't know if they want that blocked from view either.
We usually shift down a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I think would correct it.
But we've ordered the big tree for the Christmas tree lighting. So we supply that.
If we say no, what happens to the big tree? I'm kidding.
It'll still be delivered.
I'm kidding. I support, I move to support the request for the permit for Kiwanis Christmas tree sale in McCaddy Park.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
Thank you very much.
You're in. Okay, next on the agenda, presentation by Cable Commission.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. My name is Rich Perry. I'm at 875 Westbrook Drive in South Lyon. And we have 4 of the 5 members of the Cable Commission here today. And each of us will speak briefly about what we've been doing over the last couple of months. Of course, all of you in your packets have slides printed out from the PowerPoint that one of our members put together, along with which gives you a glimpse of the ideas that we have, along with a 2 or 3 page document which outlines a volunteer program, which I'll speak to a little later. So let's just walk through these slides really quickly. We don't want to really spend too much time here. By the way, everyone's going to speak up here, so I'll just start it off by going through the slides briefly. I'll read the mission statement. This came from, Amber, correct me if I'm wrong, this came from the document we received from the city, correct? I believe it did. Okay, so the mission, according to that document, of the Cable Commission is functions and responsibility is set by Part 1, et cetera, et cetera. Currently states that the role of the commission is to review and recommend rules, recommendations, and policies governing the city's government access channel, content and programming, and suggest and assist in the development of locally originated programs. Per the spirit of the mission, the Cable Commission submits these PowerPoint slides. The second slide is just talking about our near-term focus. We're thinking short-term, we're thinking long-term. Facilitating the process really means, how do we get things on the air? How do people get things to get on the air? So the volunteer program I'll talk about in a few minutes speaks to how we can do that. But along the facilitating the process, which there's a slide number 2, which shows a form that we've created, which basically says when someone's going to submit something to the city, I'm going to fill out a form. So there's a record of it, and the city needs to accept that, and they can have it for their record. And it gives information. It's also a waiver in there as well. It also says I'm not putting something in there that's not, there's no adult content, it's good for the city, those types of things, as well as copyright infringement, things like that. So that's addressed in that document, which is called Application for Submission and Statement of Compliance. The next item is engage in the community. I'll come back later and talk more about the volunteer program, but Danny's going to speak about, and Amber are going to speak about that part.
Hi, guys. Dan Pelchat. Glad to be back. A couple of things we're dealing with hurdle-wise is getting our information out to the community and letting them know that not only is the channel back up and running, that we are interested in getting content from people and volunteers like you'll hear about from Rich. The reason I want to speak to you guys tonight is hopefully getting approval to start a Facebook page for the channel to help us get out information on how to get involved and along the lines of also what's on the channel, because if anyone here has WOW knows that if you go to the guide, all it says is government access. It doesn't tell you, if we're airing one of the parades or if we're doing sporting events or whatever. And so what we can do, as long as you guys approve this, Wednesday at our meeting, we'll launch the page and start getting, the volunteer stuff out there. And also, if we do have content that's going to air, we can let the community know that way as well. So, thank you.
Amber King, 791 Westbrook. The next item on the slide is soliciting feedback from the community. We want to know what people are interested in watching. So we've put together a survey that we would like to submit to the community that collects feedback regarding who has cable, who watches the channel currently, what they're watching currently, and what they would like to see in the future with regards to programming, as well as obtaining some demographic information to figure out who to target our efforts towards. So that's something that we would like to put forward to the community to get feedback. And something I also wanted to mention, I spoke with Doreen Hannon, the director of the Salem South Lyon Library, and she was very excited when I told her we were looking for content to put on the channel regarding library programs, and so that's one area that we're looking at, the libraries. Also, the Recycling Authority gave us permission to use the videos that they already have with regards to curbside recycling and that sort of thing, informational videos that they have already produced. So that's another avenue we're looking at. Thank you.
Carl Richards, 390 Lennox. My involvement with the commission is supportive, and I was given an assignment of looking into contacting some of the nonprofits, specifically the Historical Society, which I frequent quite often, and the Historical Commission. And I contacted another gentleman in the room here tonight about getting in touch with the Knights of Columbus and the Kiwanis, and although I wasn't instructed directly to do so. I got in touch with Historical Commission and Society. The Commission gave me a statement of purpose signed by the chairman. I was asked to have it done that way so that we have it on record of exactly what they have in programming or do not have, and how they want to accentuate or help out the progress of our cable commission. Incidentally, the commission has no programming. They own no tapes, or the purpose of the commission is to maintain the facilities that we have, and it's stated in there. There'll be a statement forthcoming from the Historical Society, probably the next meeting. I also asked for a short video from them for approximately 1.5 minutes, which would be edited by the fellas probably, and something simple as just saying, hello, we're the Historical Society, or the Historical Commission, or we're Kiwanis, and this is what we do, and that type of thing, something along that line. The Historical Society does have some tapes. This is an example of a tape that or a disc, what do you call it, CD, Don and Gary production, okay? They have a number of these. It's their property. There are some other VHS tapes which are being, transferred over to discs by a retired gentleman by the name of Norm Summers. Most of you probably know him. he holds a lot of that material. He also has, for years, the know-how to transfer pictures and enhance the fuzzy out of the older pictures and produce them and get them on the computer, which is in the Historical Society, and it comes out beautiful, okay? And I, along with other people, have submitted many things to him, and he has done a wonderful job on it. Okay, the rest of the programming that has been seen on the cable in the past is the property of SLC TV for the most part, and Roger Heipel, who's in Florida, is in possession of probably 40 to 60 items, probably tapes, I don't know about discs, and Ted owns the rest under Ted TV through SLC TV.
Ted TV.
Okay, well, that's how you always announced it anyway. Anyway, that's all private property. And at this time, I think the group would be interested in knowing whether they want to form a lease agreement or something regarding these items, but statement of purpose, statement for the record, they don't own them, or we don't own them, okay? It's all private property by somebody else. And the one profitable outfit that I was given the instructions to contact was a tube mill. And we all mutually agreed they're just too important to the community to ignore them. And I've been in there. I tried to talk to them, but I didn't get very far, so I'll have to try that again. But the tube mill's too important over the history of the community to ignore, and we want to have them on board with us. Thank you very much.
I want to speak about the volunteer program. You have a document on that. And as I mentioned the last time we were here, the volunteer program is really similar to volunteer programs for local access that are all across the United States. Part of our, or a main part of our outreach to the community is to invite people to take part in this program, where they'll be trained on how to do simple multimedia production, as well as simple multimedia editing, for the purpose of getting things on the channel. The volunteer program, as I mentioned before, I'm happy to train people who are interested in doing this so they can become certified to use equipment. If in the future the city decides to purchase equipment, then we want to make sure that they're certified and sign some type of waiver, some type of document that says, yes, I'm certified to use this equipment, and if I break it, I pay for it. Those are all logistics for the future. But that's the type of program we're talking about. It's a volunteer program. People become certified to trained on equipment and how to produce multimedia and how to prepare to air on Channel 19. And I spoke earlier today with Ann from the Rec Department and some of her ideas that she had for how the Rec Department could potentially utilize the channel. She worked in a previous position with a local access channel as well, in her role in that Rec Department, and they were pretty involved in putting together multimedia content for that channel. So I think the Rec Department could be another really good. It's a natural for this channel to promote, the different programs that they offer. Amber mentioned the library. I'm sure that Commissioner Weipert wouldn't mind if Kiwanis put together something on the Christmas tree sale and the other things that Kiwanis does over the years. So the volunteer program is something that we're asking the city to nod their heads to. This is a program that we'd like to initiate. Not tonight, not tomorrow, but we'd like to get feedback from you on this and then get some direction from you. Maybe this is something that's done at the city. Maybe it's something that's done at the Rec Department. Stuff we still need to explore. Within that document, the volunteer program, I think on the last page, listed some potential equipment that may be needed to operate the channel. Right now, if one person walks in with a DVD and they want it to play on the channel, they have to take it and they have to go in the room and they have to put it in the DVD player and they push play, and then it loops until someone goes in the room again and pulls the DVD out and puts it in something else into the tray, and they push play on that, and that loops. So, as I mentioned before, it's a pretty antiquated way of running a channel. Local access departments around the country utilize an automatic playback system, whereas you take the content. Most of us have devices these days. Most of us have devices these days where you record to a digital memory stick, and then you transfer the files. And that's similar to what this product would do. You would have the files on a computer, and then you'd line up the files in a timeline. So you can say at the top of the hour, we're going to play this, and then at 12:02, we're going to play this, et cetera, et cetera. And then you push play, and you walk away. And then from your desk, you can reschedule things. It's all based, computer-based, and it's all web-based, so you don't have to be in a specific room to do all this. So there's some costs associated with that. The automatic playback system that I found recently from a company called Synergy is around $2,300 for the software, and there'll be some hardware requirements as well. And then I also recommended some simple multimedia acquisition equipment, which is basically a good digital camera that has high-def video function, which they all do these days, and a good microphone. Again, these are not things we're saying purchase today. These are things that we should explore as this channel gains in interest over time. So maybe something in the next 12 months or 24 months. It all depends on what the interest level is in the community. But like the other said, we're reaching out to different entities, the library, Active Faith, Rec Department, Historical Society. We'll reach out to Lions, VFW, Kiwanis, et cetera. We'll reach out to all the sports booster clubs in the community, swimming, football, basketball, wrestling. I can guarantee you every one of those clubs has a recruiting video that they make, or a banquet video that they make that they play at their banquet. All perfect stuff that could play on that channel for recruiting purposes. I think that pretty much rounds it out for what we wanted to talk about today. Any questions for any four of us?
I've got a few. And actually, this one probably should be to Tim initially. Our existing circumstances, it's a government access channel. So their proposal is pushing more into the realm of public access. Are there any concerns about that? Is there a way to step back away from that in the event that it seems like we're losing control of what we saw as the mission for the channel, even though everything they've spoken to seems right on target to me? But I'm just kind of concerned about us having the authority to determine the destiny of the channel.
I'm not sure that what I heard would put it into the category of public access, but I think you've raised the right point. I think if you're going to expand to different groups, you want to evaluate your criteria and your policy for what messages and programming can be displayed, whether your policies need to be tweaked about content, whether, one of the questions, and I don't know the answer to this, would be, can you allow a solicitation for donations or for something that, for people to spend money on? Because it starts to look a little commercial, and the question is that acceptable? Do you need to revise your policy to allow that, or do you need to restrict that content? So you'd have to go through a process and do a review. I think it's not about saying no, it's about making sure that you've got everything in place to allow for that broadcasting, or to say, we're just not going to go down that path.
Well, some of the sample documents had sort of alluded to the idea with the statement of no commercials. It had made allusions to the notion of no solicitation for funding and things of that nature, so.
Well, and the policy, as you recall, also allowed for sponsorship, or I think that was the term that was used, where a local business can sponsor the programming within certain parameters, identify itself without a direct solicitation for purchase or a sale.
Underwriting.
Right,
Yeah.
underwriting.
Underwriting, right. Okay. I read in the information you had provided about, broadening the scope outside of the borders of the city for people having access to the volunteer program. And clearly, we're a community that goes beyond our borders. The content that's produced on city-owned equipment, say we do end up getting equipment, will that end up being the property of the city from that point, or the producer of the content? You might not know the, off the
Yeah,
top of
that's a
your
good
head, but it's-
question, but in my past, I've dealt with some of that stuff before, but it's really up to the city. If you want to stipulate in the agreement that the volunteer signs, then any content you produce with our equipment is owned by the city, then you could do that. But yeah, and if it plays on Channel 19, and if you require a copyright signal, symbol on there, you can just require that it's copyright City of South Lyon 2014, then you can make sure that you own that content. I'm sure there's more to look into it than that, but I'm sure you can make that happen.
Well, and which kind of goes to the next thing, is the copywriting aspect of that. Is that a pretty simple process, and is there a necessity for things that are going to be produced on here to be copyrighted? I mean, is that?
Yeah,
is
I
that
don't think
common
actually there
practice?
really is a need to
Okay.
technically copyright anything on there. If someone wants something copywritten, whether it's the city or an individual, an individual could take it upon themselves.
Right, okay. So it's not a necessity. I thought that was probably a more common practice, so, okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay, Joe?
Thank you, everybody, for coming up today. I appreciate it. I just have a few questions. Well, first of all, I want to say, I think I've heard a lot of good stuff. I know that, like, Rich, like you said, there's, every organization's going to want to put their plug in or highlight their reel, and I really could see that the kids could get excited about seeing this stuff on TV, and I think there's a lot of good information there. For example, you were mentioning the library. I think that's great. For example, if they have a library board candidate forum, I think they had that online. They broadcast it, but that would be something that would be perfect for public access because, just one more outlet for our community to get to know the candidates. So I think that's great. Where I want to go next is, as I understand, Lynn, you're approving all the material that's going on the air.
Currently, yes.
Okay, because what I'm getting at is, I'd like to see this succeed. I really do, and I don't want, Lynn, you're very busy to have to, if we get the engagement that we want, that Lynn's going to have to approve, 10 hours of tape and have to sit there for 10 hours. I mean, is there any way, and maybe this is a question for our city attorney, that our bylaws are written that we could try to make it easier on her by giving some power to the cable commission or, I don't know, to approve some of this material? Because I trust what you guys are doing, and I think you're obviously not going to approve something that's illicit or not appropriate. So that's, I guess, a question for Mr. Wilhelm.
I think you could certainly delegate that authority to the cable commission and a specific individual, whether it's named directly by council, by the staff, or amongst themselves, to do that type of work.
Because what I want to see is, I want to see it, nothing against you, Lynn, but I want to see it taking away from you and maybe going to the commission when then you guys divvy it up. And you say, okay, if you got 10 hours, Carl, you're going to take 2 hours, Amber's going to take 2 hours, so that way it's fair on everybody and it's not a burden on the city. So, and Rich, 2 hours, and I'm forgetting somebody, sorry. But yeah, that's kind of the direction I'd like to see, but I just don't know how we would make that happen.
I'd be perfectly fine with that, Joe.
Okay. And well, I should have asked, does the commission, would they be open to something along those lines as well? I mean, I shouldn't have, that's my preference.
You probably got 4 opinions up here.
Right.
So feel free.
I think that's something we probably could talk about at our meeting on Wednesday night. We definitely, we weren't looking to take on that. We do realize that Lynn is busy and, maybe we both need to kind of come up with a different idea of how we get content approved to go on that maybe doesn't involve the city manager. We could definitely, like I said, we didn't come here to answer that question. We can definitely kick it around at our meeting on Wednesday, though.
And I don't mean to harp on, the football games, but I know there were some circumstances and whatever, we don't have to go into the details, but it took a few weeks to get on, basically, so if there was some streamlined process is all I'm getting at, so that's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Do you have comments on that?
No, you're the chairman.
No, I just sit back and listen to everybody. I think what Danny said is correct. Part of our job is to help facilitate this, and we're not. And certainly that's come across in our meetings. How much work are we going to do? Right? We want to be able to build this, kind of facilitate the structure, but we don't really want to create content, although we can. And viewing content is not really something that we see as a part of our duties, but just speaking personally, yeah, I would step up to, that's not a big deal. We're not going to get a lot of content, but when we do start getting a lot of content, hopefully we'll have enough infrastructure where we can figure out how that can get viewed and approved. I remember a while ago when we were first putting together the Cable Commission, I was into the city office and I spoke with someone there and they said, I'm a little concerned that we're going to be, people are going to walk in and want to do business with the city and they're going to watch us watching football games. So yeah, definitely need to work that out and I'm sure we can. But like I said, when we get that level of activity, I'm sure we'll have enough infrastructure to figure out how we can take care of that.
And just one last word on that. I think something that we mentioned in our meetings previously is if we do set up a group of volunteers who are willing to record programming for the channel, that it's possible that they would also be volunteers to, with your permission, obviously, to review material as well. So that's another option.
Mr. Mayor.
Mike?
You mentioned something about setting up this Facebook page.
Yes.
Is this something you want to do right now, or is it something that,
Well, we think it would help get our message out to the community. Everyone's on it, but we definitely wanted to make sure that it was approved by you guys before we just start running with it. And like you said, it's going to be very basic. We're not going to be out liking.
I'll be honest, I don't think you need our approval for that.
I didn't know for sure. We just wanted to make sure.
yeah, that's where I was
The
going.
library's got their own, I mean, it just,
Well, we're all rookies over here.
yeah.
But, yeah, so I guess we will just go ahead with that then if that's your guys' stance on it.
Throw out a quick comment on that.
Yeah.
One of the things we wanted to make sure, though, if we were going to set up some type of social media tool, that, one, we had the proper name for the channel, okay? South Lyon Community Access Television, Cable 19, all that stuff, we got to figure that out. We got to make sure we're saying the same thing that the city says. Maybe we use the city's logo. We got to make sure we have that. Yeah, we can set it up fairly quickly. I think we should talk Wednesday more about it first, but I think just needs to be structured, and I think the city, a member of the city should be an admin of it as well, so they could put things on there and delete things on there if they need to. So just, we want to make sure that there's some oversight of this, and it's not just the commission who's, running this.
Question was raised to me when I was in City Hall today. How often is this Cable Commission going to be meeting? Because the schedule's already made up for January, February, and March, and we're not on it. Okay, and how often do you want to hear from us? How often do you want to report from us, okay, as to our progress? As it stands right now, we probably meet once a month, but any thoughts on the matter? I just want to put it to you.
Well, I think you probably approve your minutes for the following meeting, and then at that point, they could be sent for our packets, and we can keep
Okay,
pace with
all
what
right.
you're up to at that point.
Okay. It's never been asked, I didn't know.
Your minutes
Somebody
are
ought to
pretty
bring it
good,
up right
too.
now.
Yeah.
Your minutes are good, so you get a pretty good understanding of what you guys discussed.
Okay. Guys?
Amber does a great job on the minutes.
I had one more thing I wanted to ask about the notion of these things being approved. I don't think it's going to take very long. Certainly, it depends. The library. There's a host of some of these organizations around here that we're hoping will end up submitting programming. I don't think we're going to have any concern at all about. So monitoring those things. The one example of the football game, we've kind of beaten the idea of commercials or the lack of commercials pretty hard. So when it turned out the very first piece that was submitted ends up having a commercial on it, it unexpectedly, mistakenly, whatever, it sort of, it made me wonder how serious this was being taken. But I don't think it's going to end up being a very long learning curve for people to understand what the expectations of content and production levels and what the limitations of what kind of things are going to be allowed on there will those will become pretty evident pretty quickly, so.
Yeah, I would agree with you completely, Glenn. Addressing the problem about the football game was, we're learning to play by the new rules on the channel, and we were trying to get the game turned in and on the air as fast as we could. Part of the problem would be that I had skipped around jumping to cut the audio and inadvertently missed one. There's sometimes when you're doing a game, you get into a flow and just happen to roll into what happened to be a sponsor. It definitely does me no good to leave those in there because then no one gets to see the game. And really it ends up just being a waste of my time. So I do apologize, and I did end up calling Lynn about that because there's no reason for me to deliberately leave those in there, and that wasn't the intent at all, and I certainly am not trying to waste her time either. In fact, at the end of the season, we ended up just not turning in the football games anymore, so.
I thought I kind of alluded to the idea that it was a mistake in there, so I wasn't trying to assign blame.
No problem, Glenn, I just figured I'd straighten, get you the whole story.
Right, well, and I think that that's a perfect example of how people being in an environment that it might end up being commercial for one venue and a non-commercial for our venue will end up being a situation where people will have to make some time charts commercial at this time spot, so you guys don't have to do an awful lot you don't have to watch the thing again. You know where everything is, so, that'll end up being a learned situation, so.
I know you guys want to move on, but I do want to say one more comment. We've been talking about organizations around the community submitting content to this channel, but the thing I have in mind as well is this is a city channel. This is an information tool for the city. So, I would really like to see things about the city. Amber mentioned recycling. If you go to Canton, the highest viewed program on Canton's local access channel is about the recycling program. The city, information about the city and how we do things with the city is great, is very good informational content. DPW stuff, water department stuff. I need to do something to my house, so how do I get a form kind of stuff? Well, that type of information is, you may think, how do I put it in the video? For me, that's really easy. It's I can think of how that can be done in a visually attractive way, actually. But that's the type of stuff that I could also see on this channel is, what's the city doing? How does what the city does benefit the residents? So that kind of stuff is certainly content that can be made available as well.
Okay. This is going to be cool.
Yep. Very cool. One final, Mr. Mayor. I know South Lyon East is in Lyon Township, but if there's any way we can involve them somehow, I know my subdivision goes to South Lyon East. Get them involved when you're doing the Boosters Club, if that's allowed. Maybe I would like to see that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, guys.
All right, we're on to number 3 under new business. Consider request for approval of final stage 2 plan development site plan for Knowles of South Lyon.
Why is the air on in here? Seriously.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm Carmen Aventini with CIB Planning. I'm the planning consultant for the city. And what we're here to look at tonight is a request for final PD plan approval for the Knolls of South Lyon. As you recall, you reviewed the preliminary plan, I think it was late last year, and this is the final step in that review process. The plan development agreement is also on the agenda tonight, which goes hand in hand with the final plan, even though they are two separate items. What I'd like to do is go through, because at the preliminary plan, one of the things that we do is we establish the overall layout for what the lots will be and what the road network will be and the open spaces. So it's kind of like a concept plan. At this point, with the final plan, we're getting into more detail on the project. Just so you know, even though we call it the final plan, in terms of the real review process, what happens after here, the applicant, if they get approved tonight, would then submit construction plans for engineering review, and Mike Darga from HRC is here, city's engineering consultant. They would then review the engineering plans for what they call final plan review. At this point, to them, this is preliminary. So we've looked at preliminary engineering at this point. When they do the final plans, it would be final construction drawings, and then they would actually be able to, after that is approved, begin construction. Just one other note, too, which is important when we get into the review here. When they do submit building plans for each house, when they go through the building official, I would also be reviewing each set of house plans that come through, and I'll explain in a minute why. In terms of the preliminary plan to the final plan, the layout very closely matches the preliminary plan. The primary change is after they got preliminary approval, the applicant had to submit the plans to MDEQ because there are wetlands on site. They had proposed mitigation of those wetlands, which meant that they would eliminate some wetlands and they would create new wetlands elsewhere on the site. MDEQ said, no, we don't want that. We want you to maintain the wetlands exactly where they're at. So they had to make slight changes at the entrance when you go in from Mill Street. They had to make some changes and actually had to locate the detention where the wetland is in behind lots 1 and 2. They actually had to shorten a couple of the lots, but they still meet the dimensional requirements that you established at the time of preliminary plan approval. But the other thing they did is they lost one lot by doing that. They dropped down from 89 lots to 88 lots, but they maintained all of the open space as it was shown in the preliminary plan. So we thought that was a really good thing. One thing I'd also like to add in this project too, it's been a long project for us and especially for the applicant. And one thing I'd like to add is that whenever we've made comments throughout the review process and said, no, you need to do this or you need to do that, they haven't had to been asked twice on the comments. They've, almost without exception, have made those changes right off the bat. So I think that's a good sign in terms of the developer and working with the city on this project. Another thing I'd like to point out from the preliminary plan is you may recall you did, I'm sure you recall, you did require that the connection to Lyon Boulevard be made so it has an actual direct second means of access, and that was made, that access point was made, and they have requested that the roundabout that's currently in there right now be able to remain, but that signs be put up to limit parking in that area. As I mentioned already, the open space is as it was shown on the preliminary plan. They submitted a landscape plan that was approved by the Planning Commission, and I think you know they're very stringent when it comes to making sure you have enough landscaping. The open space that is being created down the center of the project is very heavily landscaped and wooded. Their goal was to have a very natural appearance, not a manicured appearance. They want a natural appearance. And so that's exactly what will happen with the landscaping that's going in. And there is a pathway system, as shown on the preliminary plan. There's a pathway system that goes throughout. So whether you're a resident living there or somebody who lives in an abutting neighborhood, you're going to be able to walk through there and get pretty good exercise out of it, especially with the topography in that area. Sidewalks, there will be 5-foot wide sidewalks throughout the development. So it is a walkable development that connects with the rest of the sidewalks in the city. One thing I'd also like to mention too, one of the goals throughout this project has been for this to be a traditional looking development. We don't want it to look exactly like the other developments in the surrounding, in the township, for example, in Lyon Township. Not that there's anything wrong with those developments, it's just we're in a city and we wanted this development to have a city look and feel to it. And I think they've accomplished it with what they're proposing. Curbing. This was an item that we went back and forth on. The applicant had recommended or had wanted to put in mountable curbing. I recommended that it be flat face curbing like you see in traditional neighborhoods in a city. There were some planning commission members that wanted the mountable curbs, some wanted the flat face curbs. And I think members of the administration have also said they want flat face curbs. So that's the recommendation that we're making, that it be the flat face traditional curbs. We think it would go better with the appearance of the development. And we think that people would want that, actually. I think they want it to look different than the other neighborhoods.
It's easier on Bob's guys to plow to as well.
That's right, Bob wanted them to. Project phasing, it is going to go in 2 phases, and in our review of the plans, they will make sure that there is proper utilities extended to each phase. So at the end of Phase 1, the utilities will be, in the road network, will be set up in such a way that it could stand by itself. If it took, heaven forbid, if we had another housing crash and it took another 5 years to develop, that first phase would continue to operate on its own just fine. There wouldn't be a problem with it. Building elevations. We spent a lot of time working with the applicant on this. I know the Planning Commission was very concerned about the appearance of the housing units. When they came before you for preliminary, they showed you some plans. We went back to them and said, no, we don't think that's the character of the neighborhood, and they came in with some really nice-looking houses. So we're pretty happy with, and that includes the Planning Commission, we're happy with the elevations that they showed us. The one thing the Planning Commission did include as a condition is they wanted to make sure that on the rear and the side elevations that they had at least 2 different materials being used, that it wasn't just all one siding, type of siding. The other thing that's included in here is we have some standards for variety. There's very specific standards saying you can only have so many of these building elevations within proximity of another similar building elevation. There's also a requirement for variety in colors throughout the development. And you might say, well, how do we make sure that this happens? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to keep a plan here, and every time they submit for a building elevation, a building plan approval, we're going to mark it off and make sure that it fits within the scheme. And they're probably going to do the same also. So we think we've got good standards in there that will ensure that we don't have a bunch of houses that look the same. There's going to be a lot of variety. And I think if you look at the elevations, they really are very nice houses. The other thing they did with the building elevations is the garages are all behind the porches, and they're basically lined up with the front facade of the house. So we're not going to have what we call, snout houses, where you've got the garage sticking way out and the porch is really far back, and you can't really see down the street. So you won't have that issue with these.
Did you say the color is going to be managed in all the houses?
Yeah.
So what if the homeowner wants to paint it a different color down the road?
Ultimately, what would happen is the homeowners would have their own homeowners association, condo association, and when the project is turned over to them, they would have to have a committee that reviews that and any changes.
Okay, thank you.
Condominium documents, they've already been reviewed by the attorney, and we think that they're successful. Tim's going to talk more about the plan development agreement. Landscaping, when they did change the open space, we asked them to put additional landscaping around the new detention ponds, and they did. It turned out nice. The applicant did agree to plant 2 street trees in front of each house. The street lights will be traditional in appearance, and they've also proposed what we consider an attractive entryway sign when you enter into the development. So that's kind of an overview of the project, and if you have any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Did the chiefs approve the idea that the island would stay in the cul-de-sac that's going to be the extended entrance?
With signs, and I don't mean to speak for you, but
it was an either or on my end with that, and Chief Collins said it'd be a road request order, I believe, in order to get the no parking signs on Kestrel Court there, so.
That would require a traffic control order, which I would be very happy to put in place and recommend council's approval at the appropriate time.
And there's no concerns with a rig getting through there?
No, as long as we've got marked parking, I would hate for us to have gone through all the time and effort to have this tie-in and then it not be usable because of a parking situation. So, yeah, we're leaving the cul-de-sac in and doing the no parking order resolves any concern I had, so.
Now, that impacts the existing residents there. So, I mean, doesn't it seem as though maybe someone should ask them if they have a preference? I mean, you live on a cul-de-sac, you're already a really restricted area in the event that you have visitors for holidays or whatever. There's not much frontage to put neighbors or friends or whatever. So you take away whatever opportunity they have to park there by a no parking sign. Maybe they would opt into moving the island out of there and keep their parking. So,
Well, the one thing, the one thing to consider, though, is if you do open that up and you take out the island, it's going to change it's going to be a through road. It's going to change the configuration of their front yards also. So, that brings its own set of issues with it also.
I know if I lived there, I'd just as soon someone asked me as opposed to just say, this is what we're doing.
Well, there was a public hearing, and everyone was notified, and that was, discussed at the time that went through.
Okay.
Want to make a motion for the approval then? Does somebody want to make a motion? I can't.
Well, I'm still having issues with that second access point, so.
In what regard?
Well, I was a proponent for that emergency access as opposed to putting in the main road for that secondary access through the cul-de-sac when we last approved it back in October. See,
This is that secondary access.
I know, but I wanted to have it as an emergency access
Oh, I
only
see.
as opposed to a major, a main road.
Well, I make a motion that we approve the proposed final Stage 2 Plan Development Site Plan for Knolls of South Lyons, subject conditions as set forth in the suggested motion. Should I read all the, or just allude to the document?
I think it's part of the it's published on the city's website. It's been made available.
As mentioned in the,
There's conditions A through E as listed.
yeah.
I'll second the motion.
Further discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Oppose?
Aye.
I guess I heard it pass, like 3-1.
Everyone has to vote.
I didn't hear any more no's, so I mean, just assume that they voted yes if they didn't say no.
Okay, we consider it passed. Now, number 4, consider approval of the planned development agreement between the City of South Lyon and Oakland 40 LLC regarding Knolls of South Lyon.
Okay, Mayor and Council, you've been provided with quite a bit of information regarding this development. You've just approved the final plan development site plan. One of the conditions is approval of a plan development agreement. And because this is a plan development, you're enabled to enter into an agreement that basically puts all of this together. I'm going to try not to repeat too much of what Carmen's covered. But I do want to take a little bit of time to go through this. You've been provided with an attorney-client letter from me that goes through some of this material. But I want to make sure that you understand some of the highlights on this. So if you go into the draft plan development agreement, on page 3, there's a list of and this will be updated based on the plans, but it will be locked into the final plan that's just been approved. We'll be incorporating the building elevation drawings into this agreement so that we know that. There is a further provision or changing those in some fashion through administratively or coming back to council. One of the things is if you go to page 5, water and sanitary sewer systems. The water and sanitary systems will be dedicated upon completion, and the roads will be dedicated as well. One of the issues that's, I think, still needs some clarification by both parties, and so we can reach a full agreement and understanding, is, I believe it's paragraph 14 on page 17, is the financial assurance requirements. The applicant has requested that it not be required to place a financial guarantee for the public utilities and roadway up front. So normally, the city would require 150% of the estimated construction costs of those improvements, which would secure completion. Because they're gonna do this in phases, and because the roads will be concrete, there won't be an issue with a final lift or final wearing course. And what the city administration has agreed is that we will not make them place a financial guarantee for those improvements, but the condition is that they must be completed, inspected, and approved by the city before any permits for building residential dwellings will be issued. So what that does is it doesn't leave the city in any lurch, because if the utilities were not completed, there's no buildings that would be constructed, so the utilities would just remain unconstructed or partially constructed if that's where it ends. But there wouldn't be anybody living there that would need any utilities completed. So we felt that was an acceptable arrangement to make as far as the financial guarantee, which has a financial burden on the applicant. So that's how that issue was addressed. The roads will be concrete, they will be dedicated. Sidewalks, we still have some clarification to do on this, whether the sidewalks will be, it's my position that we are not going to accept dedication of the sidewalks, but under city ordinance, the sidewalks are required to be installed, and they remain the obligation of the property owner as far as removal of snow and maintenance and repair. So that will be clarified a little bit in this agreement, and that's one of those issues that still needs to be worked out.
At what point are the roads going to be dedicated on the fly? As they're completed, they're dedicated? This is,
I think
I
those
mean,
are
the
some
one
of-
thing about doing concrete over the asphalt is typically, once your wear code is on the asphalt, you dedicate them, which is
That isn't how we do it.
really,
Well, and yeah, I'm still trying to clarify through staff and consultants to figure out exactly what the city's position is.
we've done it with the,
But we take dedication of the roads with the entire substantially completed label that's put on a subdivision or a new neighborhood, not before. That's how that works, Glenn.
well, we prematurely did it with Sing because the lift station and all that.
But we don't plow in there. The only thing we took
Oh, yes.
over in there is strictly that lift station.
Right, okay.
None of the mains, none of the sewer, sidewalks, streets is still private in there.
Okay. Thank
I
you.
just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, no, that's actually what I was looking for, because,
So there are some details that regarding the dedication and the interaction between the dedication and the financial guarantees and the phasing that we need to work out, so everybody involved, both parties, understand what the arrangement is and what they're required to do and what the process will look like. Those are things that we're still working through on a staff basis and exchanging comments. It's not so much that we haven't agreed, it's just working through the details as questions come up about how will this work? How is this gonna work? Because this will be phased, the developer has to provide a secondary access. I don't know that that's going to be an issue, given the phasing, but I haven't looked specifically at that issue. But they would be required to provide a secondary access during construction. Page 8, paragraph 8 is landscaping, lighting, signs, and screening. One of the issues that still needs clarification is street lighting. The Planning Commission has approved, and the plan shows street lighting. The city at this point is not going to accept dedication of the street lights. That will remain an obligation as far as the cost. Maintenance and repair of street lights will remain on the developer, association, and property owners collectively. They will deal with that obligation transfer between developer and association through their documents.
Isn't our typical obligation that only streetlights at intersections?
Typically, our obligation is only the DTE streetlights and then the downtown decorative streetlights. That's the only streetlights that I'm aware of that the city has responsibility for. Not the streetlights that are in subdivisions currently.
No, I knew we didn't.
Developments.
Well, I thought we still had something at intersections though, so.
Most of those are the large Cobra heads like we have,
Yeah, clearly
that
we're
are
not looking
brought
for
out by
that.
DTE.
So moving on to paragraph 9, this is the miscellaneous section. This contains a lot of the material that Carmen covered. It deals with the building elevations, required exterior materials, roof shingles, exterior colors. There's an anti-monotony rule so that you don't put the same model house right next to each other. And it also deals with the road curbs, and we've provided for a process for changes and alterations to the development documents, including the residential dwelling elevation drawings and so forth. Some of that can be done administratively depending on the nature of the request, otherwise it has to come back to council. Stormwater detention or retention. The only thing that I'll highlight here is that it's my understanding that the stormwater pipes within the road right-of-way will be accepted for dedication. Open space and natural features. This document will specifically preserve those as open spaces and natural areas. The one thing I'm waiting on is a legal description of those areas. I've been provided with a drawing that shades them, but we will need a legal description describing them so that they can be accurately located if necessary. Maintenance obligations. This gets into the idea and the concept that the homeowners association developer prior to that will have an obligation to maintain the improvements in the development. The city has rights to go in after providing notice and through a process to take care of any maintenance that remains unfinished or incomplete by the association. This is an extensive, it's very detailed. I won't go into too much detail on it. Condominium master deed and bylaws, they have been provided in the packet. I've reviewed them. I need to review them again, but there are no substantial problems noted. It's really just an administrative review process at this point. The financial assurance requirements, I've described the major accommodation that's being made to the developer on this. In addition, we're still trying to deal with the maintenance and repair. So after some of these public infrastructure improvements are completed, we're asking for a financial guarantee to ensure the workmanship for a period of 2 years, which would be at 25% of the cost of the construction. So if something goes wrong because it was not constructed properly, we have money to repair that, and if this will make clear it's their obligation to make sure that infrastructure works.
Tim, no offense, there seems to be a number of issues that have not been resolved, and I'm just trying to understand why, if we have a number of issues that haven't been resolved as far as this agreement, don't you think we'd be in a better position to approve a document once we have, the city on board with everything that the city wants in the agreement, so then at that point, we could say yes or no? I'm just wondering, it sounds like from what you're saying, there's an awful lot of stuff that really hasn't been nailed down yet.
Yes, but it's not, and I just want to yes, I agree with you. There are issues that need clarification, but I would characterize them as clarification, and it's not so much about negotiating or disagreement, just understanding and clarifying and making sure this document reflects the parties' understanding as to various issues. I'm still working through staff positions to understand some of the dedication and engineering things that I don't have firsthand knowledge of. So I agree with you. The reason we're doing this is that we were ready to go on the final site plan. We don't want to hold this up too long. If you'd like to postpone it, that's fine. The other option, it would be to go, approve this subject to the administrative approval by Lynn as the city manager and myself.
Well, just
Or you can have it
right.
brought back to you.
Well, personally, no offense, I'd like to see what the city's gonna agree to.
Okay.
before we give like a blank check to say, go ahead and prove to it, not knowing what exactly, or go ahead and prove it, not knowing exactly what we're approving. So, I mean, no offense, but I'd kind of like, just personally want to see what the staff recommendations are, how we do things before we actually give approval to the second
I
part
agree. I
of
wanted
this.
to lockstep them with the site plan, though, and that's why I'm going through this.
Okay.
And there should be less to go through if we bring it back.
Okay.
If that's
I mean, that's just
the
my
council's
personal.
wish.
No, I agree. I was kind of stricken with how many things that were still fuzzy, so.
Yeah.
And we're only halfway through, right?
Well,
I'm not trying to be funny, but I heard 6 things and halfway through.
actually, it's mostly the dedication and the public infrastructure parts and the phasing and how that all works together.
But those are really critical things
I
to
think
have
they
a
are.
solid base on,
They are.
so.
Yeah. So there's insurance requirements in paragraph
Which we've
15.
learned from history.
There's a provision for reimbursing costs to the city in paragraph 16. Access to the property provides the city with access. Ownership and control of the property, there's a representation that this developer, this applicant owns the property. There are a list in paragraph 19 of several restrictions on the development, and those match some of the basic outlines that were identified in the site plan requirements.
Tim,
Variances and waivers, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Harvey, you'd like to
I
insert?
have a question regarding the amount of issues that still need clarification. How much time would the parties need to clarify all those loose matters?
I would like to see it back at the next council meeting, if that's the
Is
council's
that enough
wish.
time to get those issues?
That's what he's saying. Is that going to be enough, or should we do it for the
Because
first
I'll be happy to
meeting?
make the motion to postpone.
I don't want to put this out too far. I mean, there may be assembling, there may be, fine tooth comb type stuff, making sure the spelling and all that kind of stuff. I'll do my best with the applicant's attorney to make sure that that's as complete as can be. If for some reason it's not, I can advise council in advance of the meeting and it can be postponed again.
Well, it's one thing when it's maybe down to 5 or 6 little
Right.
things.
And
It's
you can
another
do it
thing when
next-
you have major issues that still haven't been resolved. And that's that's my
Go ahead and
concern.
make the motion. You-
So I'll make the motion that we just postpone this until the next meeting, the second part of the, I guess, the plan development agreement, until the next regularly scheduled council meeting.
I'll second.
And that would be the November 24th meeting. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, consider resolution to extend the temporary moratorium for a period of 6 months on medical marijuana land use and activities.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor and council, on May 27th, the council adopted a resolution establishing a 6-month moratorium on medical marijuana activities. We're approaching the 6-month deadline right before Thanksgiving. And Planning Commission addressed and considered a proposed ordinance to address this issue and did not take action on it and recommended an extension of the moratorium to consider other options for addressing the issue. So we're still in the process of figuring out how the city wants to address this issue. Also, I've provided council with additional information about pending legislation about provisioning centers, which would be a new wrinkle to the law. So at this point, you could, your options are to approve an extension by 6 months or whatever time period council feels is appropriate, or let the moratorium expire.
Are we not ending our 3rd moratorium on this?
Well, there was there was at least 2 years that passed between your earlier, I think it was in 2010. if I
Yeah.
recall. So I don't know that I don't see any legal issues with an additional 6-month extension.
Yes, and that was my question. Thank you.
Ted?
Okay, Aaron.
Is the planning commission going to have a result in 6 months?
That would be the objective, yes.
I thought that was the objective last time.
It was.
It was flat out requested by the council.
That's what I thought.
I would point out another option that the council has, that the city attorney hasn't brought up, is you could request to look at and consider the ordinance that was brought before the planning commission, and consider that as the city council yourself. And they were given an ordinance, they chose not to approve it, but it is your option to supersede the planning commission because you are the city council.
What's the ordinance?
I'm kind of concerned with the vulnerability that we might approve something and then have the legislature create something that really makes us vulnerable and steers us in a direction that we didn't intend to go in. And so I'm interested in holding off as long as we can
I think
till
there's ways
things are
to address
finite.
that.
I'm sorry?
I think there's ways to address the proposed legislation if it were to pass. Because it does provide for just a straight-out prohibition. So there's a fairly quick and easy solution to say we aren't going to allow these kinds of uses, to just be a placeholder at the very minimum until you can better evaluate the legislation.
Well, I don't feel that we're more vulnerable by just letting this sit for another 6 months and see if something kind of coalesces. So that's my own 2 cents worth.
I just worry about the legislative schedule, whether they're going to do anything within the next 6 months.
Are we vulnerable to not, we do this and then we don't have the ability to extend it again?
No, I think you could.
Okay.
I think you could. And the proposed legislation is not really the reason for the moratorium at this point. It's really to address an ordinance that deals with the authorized activities under the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. So I think the proposed legislation is, if I recall, maybe outside of that act even.
Well, and I'm not even speaking specifically about that stuff as to what might end up springing up suddenly from some other group, you know. I mean, for the legislature.
Well, I'll make the motion then to extend the temporary moratorium for a period of 6 months on the medical marijuana land uses and activities.
I'll support.
Further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Oppose?
Let's do something.
Yeah, really.
Planning
Okay,
Commission.
now we have something that
Seriously.
popped its ugly head today that we really got to deal with here. This is an emergency. And Bob, I'll throw it to you. We got a sewer problem.
Yep. But we have 60 miles of sewer main, water main within the community of South Lyon. Due to ongoing maintenance that we check regularly and clean, we noticed a major manhole 100 yards north of the railroad track on Pontiac Trail on the west side, just prior to the entrance to
Water's Edge.
Water's Edge, thank you, is failing. It's approximately 60 years old, this manhole, but why it's so important is there's two incoming sewer mains coming into it. And it lets probably 500,000 to 600,000 gallons of sanitary water pass through it on a daily basis, okay? When we found it back in April or May,
Let's fix
we
it.
put a patch on it, and we've been keeping a close eye on it, thinking maybe we're okay. And we started looking for fixes. And I thought I had a very inexpensive one with a company that could come in and spray a gunite-like substance on the inside, sort of like a swimming pool. And that would have worked for 20 years. But then they told us, we're willing to do that as long as you can shore up the outer edges of this thing. So we were out there today trying to do that. And we're not confident or comfortable putting lots of cement around this thing because it's so thin, the walls of it, less than an inch in some areas, that we were concerned that it might collapse in on it. So I've had 2 or 3 companies look in the last 6 months to try to come up with a remedy and a fix. And all 3 said, yeah, we'll do it, but all 3 have not come forward yet with a quote and an exact written down plan of attack. So I wanted to bring it to Lynn and your attention tonight that in the next 2 weeks, we're gonna get real active and try to get this fixed, done, and put to bed in the next month or so. So that's why I wanted you guys to be aware. This very well could turn out to be an expensive item, $50,000 to $100,000.
Do you want to actually replace the
A
whole-
manhole. It's the manhole itself, right?
It's the force main. It's a cast concrete, roughly 10 to 20 feet deep by 24 to 36 inches in diameter, depending upon where you are in the cast concrete structure. Takes a 12-inch sewer line, I think it is, that's coming in from the north, as well as the sewer line from Water's Edge Apartments that comes into it. 4 lift stations from the north feed into it. If it collapses, the north end of town will be without sanitary sewer until it's replaced. So it's not something we really can afford to let go. When Bob took me out to look at it today, there are several areas that are anywhere from 1 inch to 1/2 inch thick left. It started out at 4 inches thick in cast concrete. The sewer gases are eating through the concrete, which is not a good situation, and it could collapse at any time. That's not something we want to have happen.
Mexican eating to the north.
I make a motion, we do something. On that note.
Hey, Bob.
I'd like to add, though, I waited till she ate lunch.
Hey, Bob, it's my understanding that there is, I mean, it wasn't a budgeted item, but there is money in the sewer fund to replace this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Not a budgeted item, because I didn't see it coming when but this can be dealt with very easily. I can deal with HRC to help give us some advice, people to contact, and I'm sure we'll do just fine. But I just wanted you and the public to know that we're gonna deal with it.
Okay.
I actually would like authorization to move forward with this. Bob had a company last spring that gave us an approximate estimate of $60,000. Knowing that price range and possible changes in price and the fact that we need to get this done, I would like authorization from the council to spend up to $75,000 for the immediate replacement and get this done as soon as possible, so that we don't have to worry about it collapsing, then having to call a special meeting to get you guys together to spend that kind of money.
It's probably harder to fix if it collapses too.
It is.
I need hazmat suits.
Just, I mean, if we were to authorize 75,000, what happened if the bids come in over 75,000? I'm
Then we
just,
would have to call a
Come back
special
to
meeting.
council with it.
I'll make a motion that we authorize the expenditure of up to $75,000 for the remedy.
I'll support that.
Further discussion? All right.
Stinks.
Everyone in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
But it
All
needs to be
right.
done.
All right, number 6 out of the 7 items on this agenda, which actually became 8, but consider cancellation of the December 22nd meeting. It's been common practice. Many people like to go on vacations and so forth, and so we've been canceling that meeting, but with the premise, if there was an emergency, we try to have a quorum in town to have an emergency meeting otherwise.
This was something that came to my attention at the last meeting when the mayor said there was only 3 meetings left in the year, and I wasn't sure what he was talking about, so I started going back through last year's and the last couple of years' agendas and discovered that it was a common practice for the council to cancel that last meeting of the year with the caveat of having a meeting if they need to. So rather than wait to the last minute, I thought I would put this on the agenda this evening.
Mr. Mayor?
Joe?
Yeah, I'm not going to be the one who votes no, but I personally don't have a problem being here on the 22nd. I mean, seriously, it's a good example to the community to keep going to our meetings, but, I mean, no, I think it is, seriously. I mean, if it's a Monday meeting and it's on Thursday, right, Christmas? I could see if it was Christmas Eve or even Tuesday, but nevertheless, I won't be the one who votes no, but I don't have a problem being here.
Then you'll be one of the emergency quorum.
That's fine.
Okay.
I'll be in town if anybody needs anything,
All right, so we want to make this,
but I don't want to come.
Somebody want to move this?
I've been around here a long time, and we've never had that second meeting in December, so I'll make the motion that we.
If that sewer line blows, you're gonna be
Yeah,
here.
I wanna be out
Fix
here.
that before that meeting, please.
Okay, you're
Bob.
making that
I make the
motion,
that
Glenn?
that
Well,
we-
I'll support then in my comments.
Get off the fence.
Further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we have to consider setting a public hearing for the 2015 CDBG grant application for December 8th. By that, that's where people can, there's a little bit of money there to look at, that people might have an idea where we could use this, and that's what the public hearing would be about.
I'll move that we set a public hearing for December 8th for the 2015 CDBG grant application.
Make sure it's posted right.
Okay, supported by Bev. Further discussion?
Fit to be talked about at the second meeting in December.
Yeah. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Managers report?
This morning, we had the walk to school that was organized by a local resident, and it went over very well. Councilman Rizzi was there, myself, Lanny Young from the township, and Sergeant Venus from Oakland County. We walked from one of the residential neighborhoods across Pontiac Trail. It was a very good walk, very informative, had a very good meeting. Did have 2 residents that walked with us this morning, so it was very positive. After that walk to school, we had a meeting of all the stakeholders that are involved in the intersection at Pontiac Trail and 9 Mile. That included the township, the city, the road commission, the sheriff's department, the police department, and
Pearson.
the school district.
Yeah.
We all got together, discussed the safety issues there. It was decided several different things. The Safe Routes to School grant, which is administered by the state, which is actually federal transportation dollars, is something that we're going to look into seeking for safety alternatives. One of the things that we're looking at is putting up a signal. It was suggested by the school district that we put it at Marjorie Ann to help with both pedestrian and vehicle traffic. So that is where we're looking at right now, but I do know that there's been some discussion that the parents would like it at Lyon, and I've had a few other people discuss that they would like it at the Lyon intersection right there. I do know we have to have a traffic audit done, and so the traffic audit will identify the best intersection for that. I contacted our engineering firm. They gave us some details on the safe routes to school, passed that on to the school district and the township, and the township has already contacted the safe routes contact and worked to establish the proper procedures for safe routes. So all 3 parties are already working on establishing that grant. We've also asked the road commission to give us tentative preliminary costs for signalization in that area. It's not going to cost us anything for those preliminary costs because they've put up signals elsewhere. We just want to get an idea of what the signal is going to cost so that we can come back to the governing bodies as well as the school board with an idea of what it would cost if we don't get a grant for this. They are also, the township is going to ask for a lighting photometric study at the intersection of 9 Mile and Pontiac Trail to make sure that the lighting is adequate there. If it isn't, we will see where we need to improve the lighting, whether it's on the township side, the city side, or what we can do to improve the lighting. And the township mentioned that they have the funds in place to improve the sidewalks on their side in the areas that there is no sidewalks, but they're still working on obtaining the easements for that sidewalk, so they will be doing improvements in that area as soon as they obtain the easements.
Is that down 9 Mile too?
I didn't ask for that. I do believe it's along Pontiac Trail specifically right now, but we didn't discuss whether it was down 9 Mile or not. So it was a very good meeting this morning, and I think we had some very positive outcomes, and we will all, as an organization within our groups, continue to move forward and work to resolve the issues in that area. And that's all I have this evening.
Okay. Glenn?
Well, actually, the Friday after our last meeting, South Lyon played our last game of the season, playoff game, and it was terrific to see that in the miserable weather that we had to play in, that there was such a good turnout from South Lyon. We substantially outnumbered. the
I'd say
local-
4-1.
Yeah, outnumbered the local team's fans. So that was kind of cool. It was a disappointment that we didn't prevail, but they sure gave it everything they had, so that was kind of nice. That's all I got.
Hey, Aaron,
I'm good, thanks, Ted.
Joe?
With Veterans Day coming up, I just want to thank all the veterans for their service, and I'll leave it at that about Veterans Day. I do want to comment about the walk and just my observations of what I saw. I'll preface it by saying I realize a lot of the problems are on Lyon Township side, so it is not just South Lyon, it's a combined effort. And I will also preface it by saying that I appreciate, Ms. Ladner, that you're taking steps to work with the other agencies. I really do appreciate that. So what I saw was, we were walking with myself and, as Ms. Ladner said, the sheriff and Ms. Ladner and a couple of residents walking down the street. And it's fine because it's a subdivision, but then once you get the Pontiac Trail, of course, at 7, 10 in the morning, you have rush hour, so people speeding and going through. The first thing I saw was, and again, we can't control how residents drive or behave, but just making some observations. I saw a resident go into the left-hand turn lane and drive all the way down to the light, So theoretically, like, if a child was crossing, that would have been a potentially dangerous situation. Also saw, when we were crossing the street, when we finally crossed the street, there was a truck that pulled in where Big B is and hit the curb. And I could go on, but I guess the point is it's very dangerous, so I do appreciate that you're doing something. One other thing I would like to see addressed is I also noticed that there's a large storm drain, and this is on Lyon Township side. So again, I know it's not our jurisdiction, but perhaps you can mention it to them and strongly poke them a little bit or whatever. But the storm drain, or whatever it was, has these grates that are literally probably 6 inches by 6 inches, and it's right next to where the crosswalk is for the children. So I could see that being very dangerous if a child was walking there and really just fall through there. I mean, it's very dangerous. So something I take very seriously, and I'm glad to see that the city is getting involved. So thank you.
Okay. Harvey?
I'm good, thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, the next rec center, community center meeting is Monday, November 17th in Green Oak Township. And I drive through that intersection. I'm one of those crazy parents that drops off their kids every morning at Millennium. And I really think the biggest issue in that whole area is lighting. I really do. I know with daylight savings, it's actually a little lighter there right now. But when it was before daylight savings, I think the biggest issue in that whole area is lighting. I mean, it's not lit up. I mean, it is, but it isn't bright enough where you can actually see kids crossing. So I think that's one of the biggest issues. Other than that, I'm set.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. We had a very successful Halloween venture downtown. Understand the Village Bakery handed out 2,600 cookies and ran out. And they were disheartened that happened, but that gives you a clue to how many. I think some parents got in on the cookies too. But also, the hunting season the gun season starts Saturday, November 15th. It's not uncommon in South Lyon to hear gunshots going off outside of town, so be aware that could be going on. If anybody lives over near Volunteer Park and hears shots out that way, then you got a reason to call chief and say maybe we need a car cruising through there at daylight, because I think that some of the old-time neighbors over there have a tendency to cross over, and it is over 100 acres in there. So, and the farmer told me he saw 25 deer in one grouping. So that'll bring the hunters.
Good advertising.
Yeah. Well, it's
That's a volunteer park. No.
Yeah.
You want to give us a location?
Yes. And then tomorrow, of course, is Veterans Day, and those that can get away, there certainly is a little honorarium goes on at the Rock, right there at the corner of Liberty and Pontiac Trail at 11/11 on November 11th. And certainly, we respect our vets. With that, I'd like to call for an adjournment.
I move we adjourn.
I'll support.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That ends our meeting of approximately 1.5 hours.